Hello everyone, my name is Ignacio Garrido and I'm your host today at Factory Talks. Thanks for joining in today. For all those people who doesn't know me yet, I'm a mechatronics engineer who has been working in the manufacturing industry for 9 years now. I've been doing asset and maintenance management for the automotive industry, solar, construction, and food industries. Today, I bring you the third Factory Talks episode where I'm looking to bring lots of value, great value, by sharing with you practical and proven strategies you could use to take care of your factory. So today's topic is maintenance in survival mode, and we are going to have a talk and training with Hayk Dallakyan. He is a manufacturing leader, author, coach, and former plant and operations manager of several companies like Give and Go Preparedness. Let's welcome Hayk. Hi, thanks
Hey,
for joining us today.
thank you. How are you?
Everything good here. Very excited to meet with you over here. Before we go into our main topic, why don't you share with us a little bit about you and your current role?
Yeah, absolutely. But before, I want to say thank you, Ignacio, for having me here, giving opportunity to share whatever knowledge can be valuable for. I don't see the audience, so I hope there are lots of people here. But hopefully this episode will be valuable for some of them. And also, I think this is great platform to start, investing in and then opening up the potential, right? So when it comes to me, it's a little bit weird story how I ended up in the manufacturing. So it was back in 2007, I believe. I was doing my PhD program for biomedical engineering. So I had kind of two options. Obviously, when you're a broke student, you have to make some money. So I had two options how I need to make money. So either I go with my specialization, which is biomedical engineering, and earn $70 a month, or go somewhere else and find something else. And in my case, there was an operator role in one of the companies in manufacturing, which was paying $120. So because I wanted to get married, I was engaged at the time, so I decided, okay, more money is better than less money. So I went to this operator, and the company was, and maybe even now is, the largest confectionery manufacturing company in Transcaucasus region, called Grand Candy. And just for everybody to understand, we had 7 plants in the factory, and 3,200 people. Out of that, 2,500 were in the manufacturing alone, right? So it was a huge company. So I started as operator, and later was assigned the project optimization for the maintenance parts and the processes, and that's how I kind of got close to the maintenance, started to understand the processes, their behavior, right? And just something to tell you guys, maintenance in post-Soviet Union country is almost the same as in North America, right? They have the same behavior, they have the same problems and everything, right? So, from there, I grew to the QA leader, to the factory operation manager, and eventually, immigrated to Canada. Started here as a production supervisor slash manager in the fresh herb processing company in Bradford, then went to Mondelez as a midnight shift line leader, grew from there as a line manager, which is kind of business unit leader there. Then QA compliance, then went to the Estee Lauder as a ops leader, and eventually Give and Go as a plant director. Now I decided, I want to share more knowledge. I want to invest in some ideas that I had 3 years ago. And so I kind of created my first book, which is going to be published in on December 11 will be digital copy, and Q1 2025 will be the paper copy. And also I'm doing some coaching and mentorship for the manufacturing folks to help them grow a little bit faster. Yeah, that's a quick or not so quick story about me.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for sharing, Hayk. Thanks for sharing. And so now jumping into our main topic, which is maintenance in survival mode. I'm wondering if you may have had an experience where there was a scarcity of resources for equipment maintenance, and how did you manage to move forward through that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell one story that might resonate with some of the folks here, and kind of spread some lights how you could manage the scarcity or the problems with the funding, resources, or money, right? So I think that was when I was a business unit leader or the line manager. So I think it was around March, and we were doing pretty good from maintenance point of view. Expenses were on track, resources were on track, overtime and everything was on track. And just for the backstory, the business unit leader also was responsible for the maintenance department expenses along with the other department expenses. So we had our maintenance planner, our mechanics, our electricians, and everybody in the structure of the business unit, right? So we are doing pretty good, 2 to 3% over expense year to date in March. But then um, around 9 p.m., I remember I got a call from the plant that there's a motor failure in one of our most expensive pieces of equipment, which was a creaming and depositing machine from Europe, and it was kind of pioneer pilot for them. So it had lots of flaws, lots of weaknesses that they kind of learned on that to address it. And so that. Long story short, we found out that two of the servo motors failed simultaneously, and then the problem was we didn't have any in the stock, right? So when we contacted the OEM, they were super expensive, and the delivery time to rush order and everything. So ended up having spent almost our 1.5 months of the regular parts expenses on just these two motors, right? So we
But
eventually got the motors, and the question came, okay, how we manage forward, right? So in that company, we had these shutdowns, 1 full week. The whole business unit would go to the shutdown just for the maintenance, overalls, replacements, PM, and everything. And by March, we didn't do any. So the most too expensive activities were there that needs to be addressed, and we were already short on the money, right? So what we did, we kind of um, took the approach of the weighted weighted approach, right? So we sat down with our maintenance engineering and planning departments, and we kind of tried to answer 8 questions. So number one question, okay, what are our expenses on the descending order, right, from the largest to the lowest, right? So we made the list of all the expenses that are upcoming for the rest of the year, and then we classified them. The good thing about that company was that we had our ABC classification. For folks who are not aware about the ABC classification, is kind of from the highest priority, critical to maintain classification, to the lowest priority. So A is the highest, C is the lowest, right? So in that list we
got it.
put beside of the amount of the money, right? We put was the priority to kind of address, right? We had whatever money we had by then, we kept 10% as kind of our buffer, right, to
Mhm.
to address the unplanned expenses, whatever could happen, right? So and then we deduct the rest, right? So the rest we kind of distributed all over that list that I just mentioned, right? And then we found that we are ending up in somewhere at the end of the B list where we don't have money remaining, right? So that means the whole C category would be not addressed for the rest of the year, which is a kind of threat to the business. It can fail any moment, right? So what we did, we started to put everything from B, C category. We didn't touch A. So everything B, C category, we started to put, is there any local supplier and what is the supply, right? So we reach out to suppliers, and we found out, we separated all the items that are 1 to 3 day supply, and then we raised the risk to our planning department. And so there was alignment between planning and maintenance and production that, these are the risks that we need to take, right? So we decided to run this to the failure. I think this is common practice in the maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
run to the failure. So those items we decided to run to the failure. But also what we did, the last piece is that we put more frequent inspection on those items, right? So I don't know, say you have a roller of your cooling tunnel, right, which is under that, and it could be done in the shop for 8 hours or 10 hours or one day. So we put and let's say you have like monthly inspection on that in your CMMS, right? So we
Yes.
put it bi-weekly, right? So we could proactively find out if there is a problem with that. And the good news is after all these communication alignments and everything, we ended up here by meeting all our finance targets. We ended up meeting all our OE targets, all our GE targets. So yeah, it was a great collaboration and great example of working smart in the survival
Excellent.
mode.
Excellent. Yes, those are difficult times where we have to stretch our resources and really think out the box, right?
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. I heard a lot of suggestions, recommendations that we all could use when we are struggling. Could you share, besides the ones you already told us, could you share any other specific tactics, or give another example of tactics to our listeners that they could use when resources are limited or even abundant as well?
hmm Yeah, absolutely. So I think, most leaders in maintenance are making mistakes is when, let's say, resources are abundant, right? So you have decent amount of money, you have maybe decent amount, which is money could be decent amount, but when it comes to the resources, mechanics and stuff, I know that in North America particularly, there's a lack of resources. So I will talk only about money in this case, right? So
Yes.
if your financial resources are limited or even abundant, right? In case it's abandoned, most of the maintenance leaders, what they do, they buy parts. Hey, we'll need this part, let's buy it. So when it fails, we have it. You know how much time we'll save. You know how much money we'll save. Mr. Plant Manager or Finance Manager, let's buy it, right? But the problem with that comes this because I've seen many cases when the money were invested into the very expensive assets, and then
Yes.
we ended up throwing those assets actually because the line was decommissioned. It's we didn't need it. It ran pretty well. Probably the maintenance program was good, or there were not much stress on that piece of at that part, right? So they were left there in the maintenance shop for 5 years. Then it went to the garbage. So it's not a it's a nice to have mentality instead of okay what we really need to have, right? So I kind
Fun.
of always advise to my maintenance leaders. I told them, ask yourself 5 questions, right? So number one question, why are we buying this part, right? Okay, because we are, let's say, their answer would be because we need that part, later is going to fail, right? So that might be their answer. Or the existing part is in very bad shape. If we don't buy, we are going to a failure in every second, right? So the second question, what will be the impact if we don't buy it, right? And it's a very important question because in most cases it comes and say, oh, there's no impact, it might fail later, right? So you scratch it, you don't buy it, right? Third question, is the impact recoverable, right? So if they say, yeah, cool, okay, it's going to go down for 7 hours, is it recoverable? I think so, yes. 7 hours, it's not a big deal if you're investing $100,000, right? It's a big deal if you're investing only $1,000. 7 hours is a big deal. And the fourth question, how fast is it recoverable? Right? Is it one day? Is it 15
Mhm.
days? Is it 1 month of delivery? In some cases, some parts come from Europe. I don't know, 3 months. I heard horror stories, 6 months, 7 months. You can't have your piece of
It
equipment,
happens.
you
It
know.
happens. I've been there.
Yeah, you can't have your piece of equipment laying there for 6 months, right? That means your business is discontinued. You have a high risk on the business, right?
That's right.
And the last question, is there impact on the HSC, food safety, or morale, right? So my mentality is, if there is a human safety impact or food safety or people's morale, that needs to be prioritized on the highest priority, right? And then comes the next OEE, making productivity and stuff like that. And usually, when you answer all these five questions, it's very clear: do you need to invest or not? And in these cases, it's really easy to do.
Absolutely, yeah, and the harder it is, it becomes to get the money, to get all that revenue of to the company to buy these parts. The more strict you're gonna become with those questions, right? The more relaxed you may become later on. Excellent, excellent. Any other suggestions you may have for us?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see what kind of audience we have, but I believe you share with me
That's
that there are
a
lots of.
that's an excellent question. No worries, Hayk. This is also my first time going through LinkedIn live, but yes, we have an audience. We cannot see it in the broadcast because we
Yeah.
are using a different platform. But if you check out your phone, you can see that there are people watching us right now. If you join to the live. So
Okay, cool.
there is someone across the screen, maybe my grandmother, your uncle, but there's people over there watching us.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
my uncle is not there because they don't know English. So even my parents, they don't know English. So if I wanted to, they would not understand any words.
It will
Cool.
be the same on my family. No, 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 no worries, no worries. I have a few suggestions that I could also add to the ones you said. Um, and this will be a suggestion for maintenance managers. As I said at the beginning, I've been working for several industries, and in many industries, different facilities, I have seen that people, the maintenance teams are not prioritizing their items, are not prioritizing the work they need to have done, neither the breakdowns, the safety work orders, the preventive maintenance tasks. They are just working on the go. Whatever is urgent today, that's what they do on that day. But I don't think that's the right way to work. And as we said, if you have a constraint of resources, which could also be people, if you have limited people, if you usually need 20 people to maintain this place and you can only afford 10 of them right now, well, you wanna make the best use of them, right? And that's why I really recommend people to prioritize the work orders. There are several CMMS in the market that allow you to do that. There are some that doesn't allow you that kind of customization, but there are some other that allows you. As for example, I recommend Limble. I have used it, and you are able to kind of make your own priorities. So you may have a critical work orders, which are maybe your assets that are down. Then you have maybe a high priority work orders with maybe equipment about to fail. You may have PMs later on, and so on, right? And then at the bottom, you probably have those low priority work orders that if you are lacking the resources, you may never get the time to do it, right? Which is fine because we are doing the most important. So that's a suggestion. Then for the people who are working with inventory, um, which in some cases maybe even the same maintenance managers if the team is not big enough, or the parts manager, if they don't have enough manpower to order the items, to uh, sort them out, to store them when they come over, I really suggest to reach out to some suppliers and try to get some VMIs deals. Have you ever heard about VMIs? Hi,
No, I haven't.
excellent. So VMIs are things. They are the the full name of this is called vendor managed inventory. So that means you reach out to a supplier. Let's say you have a lot of fastenings at your workplace, right? And I'm not doing promotion for Fastenal, but you know that there are Fastenals everywhere, right? So you may reach out to them and tell them, hey, I want you to supply all these nuts, bolts, etc. that I using on a daily basis, right? It's a bread and border of all facilities, and I need you to look after them, right? So now you don't need to look after a certain section of your inventory. So they come, they figure out how much is that you need on a monthly basis, they measure your stores, and they supply them. So the only thing you may need to do is to leave them maybe with an open purchase order, or once let's say every 2 weeks or 1 month they send you the bill. That's it. But you will need to invest the manpower to order these items, to measure it, to store it, etc. So that's something very useful that personally I have used when been lacking some resources. Another suggestion that I have is that for these people that are have a limited team with limited skills. They may not have the meteorite with the best experience in the market. They may not have also some capabilities in their facility. Uh, Sometimes it's very convenient to have some machine shop equipment so you can custom make some parts, right, or do some machining at your facility. But unfortunately, that's sometimes something that is not affordable, or we just don't have the expertise to use it. So I really suggest to go outside, reach out a contractor, because it may be easier, you may save time with your team. With your team, you may save some money by outsourcing those that sort of things, that expertise, that manufacturing, and you may get some peace of mind. And by the way, I have a contractor who I recommend in the GTA mostly. His name is Nutech. That's the name of the company, Nutech Cold Wash and Turning. I'll add their contact information later on. They are very good at what I say. For my last suggestion, for these people who is maybe working in finance, um, people, even managers, um, maintenance managers, if the company is going through some cash flow issues, I'll suggest for the maintenance manager to make a list of his suppliers and figure out, kind of prioritize the suppliers. And it's not like we are not going to pay them, but unfortunately, if the company is going through some cash flow issues, we will just need to decide these are the companies that we are gonna pay first. Then as soon as we have the cash flow coming in, we are gonna pay the others, right? Because of course, if for example, some time ago I was talking with a facility manager, and he was telling me, you always put this company that recollects the garbage of your facility at the top of your list, because if you don't pay them, you're gonna pay a pile of garbage, and people is gonna be very annoyed, like you're gonna get in serious trouble, right? So
Yeah,
so that kind
that's
of
true, right?
Yeah, like that kind of stuff, you don't want to stop paying it. Neither the guys who may be dealing with your compressors, the guys who may be dealing with repaying your products, etc. Right? So I'm just saying you need to be a little bit more wise about your the way you handle your resources. Other thing they can do is you can change your terms of payment. If you've been working with a contractor for 10, 20 years, they will understand it and they may allow you to move from 30 days to 60 days, right? Because they want to keep your business. They understand that you may be going through some difficult times. Um, and well, then the last option is you may try to switch suppliers for some time. And again, I'm not saying don't pay your suppliers. That's not what I'm saying. We just need to try to keep the show going, right? And we are figuring out a way to keep the business running, because otherwise we can produce the money to pay, right? So we need to keep the show going. Um. Anyway, for the people who is in our audience, wanna see if we can figure out a way to see their comments. Unfortunately, I'm not good enough at get a LinkedIn live to look at the
Are
comments.
you
I know
are you
we have yes, we are gonna learn from this experience. Later on, we are gonna give advice about it as well.
Well, yeah,
um,
one thing, Ignacio, maybe I will add to your kind of
yes,
resource lack and stuff, because I'm pretty sure there are lots of people now in audience from maybe production, HR. There might be quality folks as well in the audience. It's a combined effort, right? So, for example,
yes,
I've seen the maintenance spending something on the line which is not priority anymore and not a major loss, right? So, when it comes to the working together, like the production managers, they can create a list of the top five losses and the highest priority based on the volume, right? Share with the maintenance department, the HR manager, right? To understand, is the lack of resources impacting the morale of the people, so how we can address and escalate, right? Quality managers, what are the non-negotiables for the food safety, right? Hey, these are the non-negotiable, you cannot cut on that, right? You need to spend on this. HSC the same way, right? Then but plant manager, to understand all the dynamics. So one thing that it was a brilliant way of communication, and I find it as a kind of the best way of doing the daily meetings. We had this DMS structure in back in Mondelez, which I always promote everywhere I go, where you have 5 levels of communication, starting from the plant shift to the 24 hours, to the DMS daily meeting with management, weekly, monthly, and eventually you have on the monthly level everything, right? So all the leaders comes, they share their concern, and maintenance gets that information and then adjust their plan accordingly. I think that works the best way.
yeah. I think overall we leaders leaders need to step up, especially operations managers, plant managers. I think their input, their insight, their leadership is so valuable at this moment, because that's what it's going to help with that teamwork, right? As you said, it's a work of everyone: HR, production, quality, maintenance, etc. And I think the plant manager it's it's a key component in in explaining what is the current situation of the company and trying to put all the pieces together. But also, that's as you said, morale is very important. It's very important to let your team know that yes, we may be going through some scarcity or resources for some companies, their culture is about or resources are always tight, right? That's a way to stress a little bit or to push for positive decisions. Um, but they need to let their people know that people are not going to lose their jobs, and they don't need to. They have to inspire. They have to inspire instead of demotivating people.
Remove the stress from the people level, right? That's the job of the leaders, right? To deal with
That's
the
right.
problem and to remove the stress.
That's right. Completely agree with you. Completely agree with you. All right. So for the audience who may have forgot to take some notes, you may replay this webinar later on, since we are gonna keep it here in LinkedIn, and I'm also going to upload it into YouTube later on. And so now we are going to move to the second part of this webinar, which is about types of failures and maintenance model to use according to your budget and equipment criticality. Right. So let's start with some basics. I'm gonna push for a lot of information right now, guys. Um, if you may be struggling with some concepts, don't hesitate to reach out. I know that this may be a lot for this short period of time, but end of the line, I'm gonna come with some conclusions later on for those that may get lost along the way, and I hope that that brings you some value. So let's start with the PF interval. So when we are talking about about equipment, about assets, well, assets are going to fail at some point. And so we have this nice graph to show us how it may look. This is a curve, right? About how does it look when the equipment starts to deteriorate. And so if we look into and I think you cannot see my cursor here. This is not so. This is new for me, guys. I'm so sorry. Um, so we have the condition of the assets in the Y, and we have time in the X. So if we start with the top left point, this is the point where our equipment starts to deteriorate, starts to fail. All right, but this is sometimes a point that we cannot really see. Luckily for us, over the last few decades, technology has improved a lot. So now we have lots of tools. We have lots of different monitoring devices that helps us to figure out to get to know when is it that our equipment or some section of the equipments are about to fail. And so if we see the graph, there is a P right in a circle. So that's the point in which you recognize that we have a potential failure coming over, right? And we could figure out that with a lubricant analysis, with that vibration analysis, or with some other studies, with some maybe electrical studies as well. And so based using those tools and with some interpretation tables, we can figure out, all right, is this an acceptable condition that we have? It's not an acceptable condition that we have. Um, but let's say we don't do anything about it, which fortunately some companies go to that situation. They have the monitoring devices, they have the tools, but no one is taking action. Well, we have in the curve here that the failure starts presenting itself in a more clear manner. So we start having strange noises, we have heat, we have smoke coming over from the machine, etc. And that's when the failure occurs. And usually all the last section occurs in a sometimes in a very short period of time. Sometimes it takes weeks, right? We start hearing that noise, and we go to the machine. It's like, okay, there may be something wrong with it. We let it go, and then a few days later, it's getting hot on that area, right? So we get some indication. So this is the basics of how a failure starts happening, and what happens in between. So if we use that curve, um, we compare it, we kind of think about it while we look into the different types of maintenance, we may understand better what the different types of maintenance mean. And again, guys, for all those facility managers who are watching us, this may be something redundant for us. For people who hasn't heard about this may be a lot of information. But just summarizing for people who is not aware of these concepts, so we have the corrective maintenance, which is the type of maintenance that we do after the failure already happened, right? So that will be after F point. That's after the failure. So that's when we come in, we repair, we replace. Then we have the preventive maintenance, which is somewhere, usually between mostly before we start hearing some noise, some heat, some smoke, before all of that. Because when we hear the noise, it's like we are already using our senses. We already know that something is going wrong. So preventive maintenance is doing something in a preventive manner, just in case something goes wrong. We want to prevent it for the failure. So that's before we have the noise, and maybe even go a lot before than when the equipment starts to deteriorate. Maybe the part, the section, the asset is completely fine, and we are replacing this part, doing this activity, on wasting labor, wasting resources, and that's why it's a it's not a it's not a type of maintenance that we want to do for all our assets because it's expensive. And then, well, again, we for the preventive maintenance, we may divide it into different types of preventive maintenance, which could be systematic, which is the maintenance that we are going to be doing every certain amount of time, every 100 hours, every 2 weeks, etc. Or we could have that conditional preventive maintenance that is based on a condition, whereas, for example, we have a compressor. We have established previously a condition where we will just replace the oil of this compressor if the analysis of this oil comes under certain results, right? If it's not under those conditions, we are gonna keep using that oil. So that's conditional. We establish a condition where we are gonna do that preventive activity, and then we follow through. If it doesn't meet the conditions, well, we just keep rolling. Then we have the predictive maintenance, which is something very similar as the conditional preventive maintenance, which, going back to the graph, the conditional maintenance will be about where we have these tools detecting the failure before we get the failure, right? This is where we are going to establish our conditional maintenance. Up, moving to the predictive maintenance. Usually, we may even have some models, some mathematical models, some AI that is gonna help us to predict when is it that the failure is going to happen. So we optimize the resources, um, and we versus the risk that we have for the failure. So, but again, this all depends on the criticality of your equipment. This all depends on your budget. Um, this depends in many things. For example, you don't want to do predictive maintenance in all your equipment because it's very time intensive. You have to invest a lot of resources to do to make these efforts, right? I'm sure, Hayk, if we go back to your tale, to your story, you told us about this study, this analysis that you did, right? About the parts. That really took some time. You really save resources, right? You really save resources by doing it all. It was completely worth it. But you just, for example, you maybe just wanted to do that ABC analysis with certain assets, right? For other types of assets, you just didn't even consider them, right? Like you didn't even consider the pump truck. It's like we are not even gonna talk about that, right? So that's the case with predictive maintenance. And then there are these pattern distributions, right? We are gonna link all together, guys. Don't worry. Just please follow me. We have these pattern distributions. This is how the equipment failure looks. And again, this is uh, these graphs, these curves are a little bit different to the previous one because over here on the Y's is the higher it is the bigger the risk that we have for the equipment, for the asset, for the function to fail. If we go into the X, we have time. We have time. So the 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 top left curve that we have is the bathtub. So that's a curve that combines the infant mortality, which is the bottom right, which is when, for example, we get some parts that didn't go through proper to some proper quality, uh, that didn't go through some I don't know good engineering, right? So those are the parts that may be failing at the beginning. Those are maybe function section of your machine that are gonna be failing at the beginning, and then later on, it's like when you are going through these situations in your workplace where you are kind of um, customizing some solutions with the resources that you have, and you ask your technicians, hey, is this going to work? He may answer you, well, I am not that completely sure, but if it works for 5 minutes, it's gonna work forever, right? So this is sort of like that. Um, so we have this infant mortality curve, and then on the other end of the bathtub curve, we have the wear out curve, which is mostly the curve that we are used to, where we are thinking that the most we use that asset, that part, that section, that function, the more is gonna worn out. So we need to replace it, repair it, do something about it. You may see that there are some percentages in each one of these curves. These percentages are based on studies. So these something I should have said at the beginning. These curves and their percentage represent the probability that you have for an equipment, for a part, for a section to fail. And the reason why you see that those percentages like very clear is because well, Limble made came up with an analysis with some conclusions from three different studies that were done many years ago, and from they put this information together, and so with that information they come up with that, for example, 3 to 6% of the items, functions, assets are going through the vector pool, right? Whereas some other items are suffering from a random pattern, right? So that means it it just fails. It will just fail anytime, right? Um, and in my experience, at least that's been the case for many electrical components, for some electronic boards. They may just fail anytime. Um, but this all depends. These curves are not really marked on stone, and so you may have some specific curves in your workplace. You may, for example, know that if you have some cranes, you if you don't change the contactors every 6 months, your motors are gonna start breaking down, right? So because you already know that, you are gonna implement some preventive measures. Basic care. All right, guys, this is a suggestion recommendation that I basically doing to all of you, and it's about what's the minimum you should do if you're really struggling with resources. First is legal maintenance, right? You have some responsibility in your workplace. You may have cranes. You may need to do daily, weekly, yearly inspections, right? That's by law. You may need to do certain kind of maintenance, so that's you can escape. You can escape that, right? So you have to do it. You cannot stretch too much the resources over there. Then the second thing I'll recommend you is to lubricate your equipment. I think that's extremely cheap, extremely easy. It only takes a little bit of time, and you can really extend the life of your equipment. And by the way, I'm kind of prioritizing these recommendations. So again, you start with legal maintenance, you go to lubrication, second one, then you move to visual inspection. You even thought about it. You said when you were struggling with the budget, you incremented the frequency, right, of your inspections, because that's not gonna cost you money, right? It's a 5 minutes.
You need to have
Pardon me?
resource. You need to have resource going checking it, and you have to have a standard how it should look, right? And
Absolutely. That's you need some resources, but it's not as expensive as, for example, replacing the whole section, right? You better only look after it. You monitor it, and then the moment you figure out that something is going wrong, that's when you go hands in, right? So visual inspection is an activity that doesn't require you a lot of resources. As Hayk said, is not free, but it's best than nothing, than just leaving your equipment. Sometimes equipment may be in very bad conditions because no one is really uh, leaving an eye on them. Like, it's been a month, 2 months since someone stepped up into that room, and nobody saw that the exhaust was completely blocked by a piece of cardboard, right? So that room is in fire, something like that. So that's why I said lubrication is going first, because when you go and lubricate your equipment, it's like it's forcing you to be next to your equipment, and if you see, if you hear, if you feel that something goes is wrong, it's um, it gives you the time to notify your team, hey, we need to take action because I saw this, right? And visual inspections is somewhere in between, may take you a little bit less of time. Um, but the important thing is going there, is staying there, is uh, taking a look, and then at the end I'm adding the cleaning. And that's again, that may be the most expensive thing you may have to do. Um, Sometimes the equipment is just struggling because there is a lot of debris, there is oil, etc. And you may just need to do some cleanup, and you're back in the game. But that may consume that some resources, depending on the industry where you may be working. All right, so let's link all together, guys. So what model you should be using? What model should you be using? Well, according to your equipment or specific plan, I want you guys um to first think back on the different types of maintenance, right? So we said there is corrective, preventive, and predictive maintenance, right? So I described you each one of these, and I want you to keep that in mind when we look at this chart, because this is something completely different. What you see over here, these are some models, okay? Some models that have a name, right? This was proposed by an author that I really like. His name is Santiago Garcia Garrido. He is his expertise is in maintenance management, asset management, and so he proposed these five different models where you are putting together different strategies, right? So, but but I don't want you to stay only with the name of the model, because that maybe is going to confuse you. I want you to really read the description, because that's what it matters. So first, run to failure model. This is the model that you are going to use for that kind of equipment where you don't really need a strategy. You don't really need to take care of it. As we say, the pump truck. If it fails, well, we replace it. That's it, right? Sometimes it's even cheaper to replace them than even repair them, because you need to buy parts, you need to have all this inventory system for them. You have to assign people for them. Many tools are this time are right now so cheap that it's better to buy them new than try to repair them. So you have to decide according to the equipment criticality and according to your budget what equipment is going to be on that model. All right. And the criticality analysis is another analysis that we are not going to discuss on this webinar, but that's something you should look into. All right. Then we have the corrective model, okay, which is the most basic, and I think that's where we have the basic here that I am proposing on the last slide, which includes the visual inspection, lubrication, and of course repair of failures. All right. And again, don't confuse the corrective type of maintenance with this corrective model, okay, because this is a model. We are including here three techniques, right, which is the inspections, lubrication. We already say that this is not gonna cost you a lot, right, but it's gonna give you a lot of benefits. And then we have the repair of failures. Then later on, we have the predictive model, where we are including, besides the visual verifications, the visual inspections, verification, we are including the condition-based maintenance. All right. And now I want you to take a look to the systematic model. All right. Please, again, don't confuse the name of the models. Okay, what it means, each one. Systematic model. Okay, yes, we are including over here some systematic tasks. You can see it at the bottom of the column, besides everything that was said earlier. But here's the way I want you to use this chart. You need to use it from left to right. Okay, so what it means, the more important is my asset, the more resources do I have, I move it more to the right. The less important is my asset, the less resources do I have, I move it to the left. Okay, so ideally, I would say that in a company where we are struggling with manpower, we are struggling with economical resources, I would say we should be, if possible, we should be trying the predictive model. Okay, which is, we are doing visual inspections, we are doing lubrication, we are doing condition-based maintenance, which is not systematic maintenance. That means if I have a crane and I don't have enough money to replace the electrical contactors as often as I like, every 6 months, maybe I change them every year or so, or every year and a half. Well, I going to check how electrically, how is my motor doing, how is the crane motor doing, with some winding test, because equipment doesn't last forever. We can we can reduce the degradation of the equipment with preventive measures, as replacing the contactors, but that motor is going to fail. So if we do some condition monitoring on this asset, as I said, maybe doing an electrical analysis on the windings with some predictive tools, we can know for sure if the windings are okay, and we can reduce that uncertainty, right? But if you look at it, this is the predictive model, and we are not including all the tasks, all the systematic tasks that maybe some supplier, maybe the manufacturing is advising us. And this is the key thing over here on this chart. Guys, we've been mostly advised by manufacturers that we have to do 50 systematic tasks in our equipment, but sometimes we don't have the resources. Many times we don't have the resources, and that's why you need to come up with your own condition-based monitoring, right? I'm not saying you need to invest in the last technology, all right, to permanently monitor your equipment, certain variables. So, for example, you can come up with some tools that will help you to monitor your equipment, as for example, thermometer, right? You could come up with some, you can buy some very cheap electrical tools and measure your voltage, your current, etc., on a recurrent basis. And that's condition-based maintenance. Are your variables acceptable or not? So that's the basically my message for you guys. Figure out your equipment criticality, figure out your budget, and the more you move your equipment to the right, is the more you are gonna spend on it. So you have to be wise about it. Anyway, guys, um, that's gonna be all for today. Hayk, is there something you would like to add to our training or webinar today?